Hi guys, so today I am going to cover nutrition basics. So this is basically the fundamentals of nutrition and basically how it serves a purpose in our lives. So we're going to cover macro and micronutrient functions, calories and energy balance, deficit and surplus, meal timings, diet types, healthy eating, salt and supplements, and a load of other things in between. So, this is just a nice little quote that I literally thought summarised nutrition so perfectly, especially in a sense of like exercise and nutrition. Hard work should be rewarded by good food, and good food should be rewarded by hard work. So it kind of works both ways. But yeah, I just thought it was a really nice little quote. So, macronutrient functions. Carbohydrates, let's kick off with those. So the carbohydrate is the body's preferred energy source. Your body processes it in two ways. It turns it into muscle glycogen to actually give your body energy. And obviously if you eat a surplus of it, or if you eat more than your body actually requires, then it just gets stored as fat as an energy reserve source, basically. There's two types of carbs. You've got your complex carbs. So these are things like your brown rice, your brown pasta, brown bread, oats. And they are digested really slowly. So they then provide the body with a really stable flow of energy. And then on the flip side, you have your simple carbs. So these are ones that are generally a little bit high in sugar or higher in sugar, like your white bread, crumpets, cereals, that kind of thing, basically. And they are digested a lot more quickly. They provide a quick spike in energy, which is why they're good as like a post-workout meal. But they can often cause energy crashes, basically. And with carbohydrates, you want 50 to 60% of your daily calories coming from carbohydrates. We don't want to be cutting them out. And 90% of those carbohydrates should be from complex sources, so that we are being filled up with energy, and that energy lasts for a long time, basically. Protein. So protein is the most abundant macronutrient in the body. That is what obviously like your muscles and your organs and stuff like that are made out of. It is the building blocks of the body. And its function as a macronutrient is muscle repair, muscle growth and satiation. So that basically means that you're staying full. Insufficient consumption of protein, you're going to have a really sore body after your workouts. Your body will actually start to shut down and basically use your muscles and organs as an energy source. And you're more likely to binge. So people who have a higher protein diet are going to be fuller for longer, and they're actually less likely to binge or graze or over snack. So one thing that certainly my clients always say to me is how full they are, how they're actually eating a lot more food than they ever have before. And it is literally because you were probably eating an extra 60 to 70 grams of protein compared to what you ate before. So yeah. Now, protein is processed in three ways. Obviously, it is two ways it's meant to be. Cell repair, cell growth, cell maintenance, basically, as I said, building blocks of the body. And it also contributes to hormone and enzyme production. So enzymes are basically what your body uses to digest your food. And then in the case where you eat a surplus of it, it is stored as fat. So it is the reserve energy source. The reserve energy source is fat. And it's a really misunderstood macronutrient. People think if you eat fat, you get fat. That is not the case. If you eat too much fat, then yes, you will. But it has a really important function in our body. It actually slows down the digestion of carbs. So that's why it's really important to have a good amount of fat with your meals, particularly your pre-workout meals and your breakfasts. It just means that you're going to stay fuller for longer. And that's why the most balanced meals that are literally going to keep you full for a long time is something that's got 10 to 15 grams of fat, at least 30 to 50 grams of protein, and it's got a decent amount of carbohydrates in, complex carbohydrates. There's two types of fats. You've got saturated trans fats and mono and polyunsaturated fats, which people try to lump into good and bad fats. they're not really good and bad fats. You just have fats that provide more for your body in terms of like, you know, nutritional benefit, and then you have fats that don't really provide you with any nutritional benefit. So saturated and trans fats, their only function really is that they increase cholesterol, which obviously isn't a good thing, which is why we want to kind of minimize how much of them we're eating. You don't have to eliminate them from your diet completely, because you know, you'd be miserable if you didn't have things like chocolate and butter and cheese, which is basically all saturated and trans fats. And then you've got your mono and poly unsaturated fats. So these are things like your nuts, your avocados, your olive oils, that kind of thing, and they provide a lot of good for the body. You know, they make sure that you have good skin, hair and nail reproduction. They reduce inflammation in the body, they regulate your hormones, and they assist with the vitamin and mineral digestion that you take on from your food. So yeah, I mean, the thing with good and bad fats is people say, oh, you know, that it's fine, I'm having it because it's good fats. They both carry, both saturated and unsaturated fats, both carry 9 calories per gram. So it doesn't matter what you're eating. If you're just having like good fats, if you have too much of it, you're obviously going to be put into a surplus. And, you know, it's the same with protein and carbohydrates as well. Protein and carbohydrates both carry 4 calories per 1 gram. So how much should you be eating? For females, you know, really depends on like your size and your weight and your height. But generally, we say that females, you should be having 25 to 30 grams of protein per meal, and 10 to 15 grams of fat. And blokes, you should be having 40 to 50 plus grams of protein, and again 10 to 15 grams of fat. And females, you know, you can distribute them how you like, but ideally, because pre and post workout meals are the 2 most important meals of the day, you should be having 30 to 50 grams of carbs for both pre and post, and males should be having 60 to 70 grams of carbs for pre and post. Cool. So moving on. Micronutrients and their function. So micronutrients are your vitamins and minerals. There's 4 different types. You have water soluble, fat soluble, macro minerals, and then trace. So starting with water soluble, these aren't stored in your body. These are basically things that you get from food and your body utilizes it there and then. This is all of the B vitamins and vitamin C. And some of the functions include, but aren't limited to, you know, converting food into energy, regulating your metabolism, you know, red blood cell creation, general cell function, and obviously contributing to like proper central nervous system and brain function. So super, super important. You know, have a look online if you want to find out like what foods give you what, but you know, most of these come from things like red meat, like vitamin B12 obviously comes from meat, and things like beans, and basically a lot of like leafy vegetables, that kind of thing. But have a look, there's loads of charts online that you can see, that basically will tell you like what foods give you what, but it's good to have a good balance of them all. Fat soluble, so these are things that are stored in your fatty tissues for future use. This is why it's important to actually have a body fat percentage. You know, this is why it's not healthy or sustainable to have like 3 to 5% body fat, because obviously you then are missing out on your vitamins A, D, K and E. And these are best absorbed when you are consuming a source of fat. Again, another reason why it's really important to have a good source of fat in your diet. And as I said, they're stored in your liver and fatty tissues for future use. And functions, again, include things like organ function and vision, boosting your immune system, making sure that's constantly working, fighting off diseases and illnesses. Bone health as well. Vitamin D basically helps the absorption of calcium. And obviously helps with things like blood clotting, so you don't bleed out basically every time you get a scratch. So macro minerals, these are things that are required in larger amounts, that play a really important role in your body. So you've got things like calcium and phosphorus, which contribute to bone and teeth structure and health. Magnesium, which contributes to enzyme production and blood pressure regulation. Sodium and chloride, which we'll go on to a little bit later on, but those basically maintain homeostasis in your body, which is basically like water regulation. And they also help create digestive juices, which is obviously like what breaks down your food in your stomach. And then things like potassium, which helps with nerve transmission, muscle function, and cell fluid status. So again, contributing to homeostasis within your body. So water retention, making sure that your body is hydrated. And then finally, things that are trace are needed in smaller amounts than macrominerals, but still very important. Things like iron, which helps provide oxygen to muscles and helps with the creation of hormones. Manganese, which is not like a super common one that people ever think about needing, but it's like super important. And that basically helps to metabolize things like carbohydrates, amino acids, which is what you get from proteins, and then cholesterol, which is obviously what you get from your saturated and your trans fats. So it's super, super important. It's basically like the mineral that helps your body break down what you're eating. Like, it's so important. Copper, this helps with connective tissue formation, so things like your tendons and your ligaments, and also helps with the brain and nervous system function. Zinc helps with growth, immune systems, and wound healing. Iodine and selenium, super important, particularly for women, helps with thyroid regulation and health. And then obviously fluoride, which you basically have in your toothpaste, which helps with the development and the strengthening of bones and teeth. Cool. So, energy balance and calories. So this is basically the fundamental of how to succeed in a bulk phase or a maintenance phase or a body recomposition phase, or of course a fat loss phase. This is literally the nitty gritty of what it all comes down to, is what your progress relates to at the end of the day. So calories in versus calories out. People bang on about it all the time. It is basically the foundation of success in whatever your goal is. That is basically the premise of what it all rests upon. So the energy balance equation is calories in minus calories out. Balance, so if you have like a calorie balance equation, that basically means you are consuming and burning the same number of calories. So say your calories that you are intaking is 2,000, you are also burning 2,000 calories, and it means that your weight would probably stay the same. This is what we call maintenance. Negative balance, this is basically where the calories you consumed is less than the calories that you were burning. So this is your deficit, this is your fat loss phase. If you are finding that your weight loss is plateauing, your fat loss is plateauing, it's because you've come out of a negative balance into a positive balance, or you are just in a balance, basically. So this is literally how you lose fat. And then a positive balance, so this is where you're consuming more calories than you're burning, and this is a surplus, bulking phase, a weight gaining phase, that kind of thing. So, moving on, a little bit more information on deficit and surplus and maintenance. So a deficit, as we said, is for a fat loss phase. We create a deficit either through reducing the amount of food you're eating or increasing the amount of exercise you're doing, or both. If you aren't losing fat, then it is because you are not in a deficit. This is literally the most important thing. Going forward, if you find that your weight and your measurements are kind of halting, it's either you've eaten more than you should have, or that you normally do, and you've been put into a maintenance or a surplus, so that's why your weight has stagnated, or it just means that your body has adjusted to the calories that you were on, and it's time for a calorie reduction. On the flip side of that is a surplus. So this is where you're looking at your muscle and weight gaining phases. And this is basically created through increasing your food consumption. After a while, after you've increased your food consumption, this will basically give you the energy to increase how much energy is being outputted by yourself. So you're going to have more fuel in your workouts, which means you're going to be able to lift heavier, which means you will burn more calories. Now with the surplus, it's really important you do this incrementally. Like say your maintenance is 1,700 calories, you would never go straight in at 2,500 calories, because you would just put on fat. In order to actually put on good muscle tissue, you have to do this a little bit by bit and just wait for your body to kind of get used to the calories before increasing again. And then finally maintenance, which for a lot of people, it seems like it's a long, long way away. We're either flitting between surplus and deficit, or we're in deficit all the time. You know, you don't ever go to surplus. Maintenance is just life. Like, being able to maintain is basically the end goal for all of us. The end goal isn't a deficit. It should be a maintenance. You know, it's basically post-fat loss phase. It's everyday life. It's what you're going to be doing once you finish your plan. Once you've reached your goals. So it is the best starting point for any phase. You know, in an ideal world, everyone that joins, we would have 3 months of doing a body recomposition before going into a fat loss phase. You know, you should really reset your body, make sure your metabolism is on fire before going into a fat loss phase. That is basically the ideal situation. You know, and that's why you may find that in the first week or so, you're on a lot of food, and it is basically just to prime your body for a fat loss phase. You have to earn the right to diet. So yeah, that's just the best starting point, is getting your head around maintenance, being in a maintenance, and then progressing into a deficit. Now, for people who are already lean and don't have a lot of fat to lose, maintenance calories are the best option, because you can basically do something called a body recomposition. Now, body recomposition is where you simultaneously lose fat and build muscle at the same time. Now, people will argue that you can't do that at the same time, and certainly if you're in a deficit, it's very, very, very hard to gain muscle, because you're not fueling yourself, you're not eating enough food in order to do so. And, you know, equally, you can't lose fat when you're in a surplus. But this is the beauty of a maintenance phase or a body recomposition phase, is because you have basically the benefits of both being in a deficit and a surplus. You know, you're really full, you've got a good amount of food going into you, you're not hungry, but you're losing fat. You may find that your weight doesn't change a whole lot, but your general sort of like body composition and the way you look will change drastically. So that is a maintenance phase, and it links onto a body recomposition phase, which is a very good fat loss tool. So meal timings. Now, one thing that I like to suggest is that we don't look at meals as breakfast, lunch and dinner, because 3 meals is simply not enough food, especially if we are training. You know, we should be looking at 4 meals a day. You have your morning meal, mid-morning meal, afternoon meal, and evening meal. And depending on whether you're training or not, this breaks up into pre- and post-workout meals. So say you're training in the morning, your meal 1 would be your pre-workout meal to fuel you for the workout, or if it's a rest day, it should be fueling you for the first sort of half of your day. If it's a pre-workout meal, it absolutely should contain every single macronutrient, as I mentioned earlier. If it is just your first meal, if it's your breakfast, protein and fat is more than sufficient. You don't need, people might be hungry in the mornings, but you don't need like a lot of carbohydrates first thing in the morning. So sufficient, like if you like saving your carbohydrates for later on in the day, then I would always recommend a carb-free or a really low carb breakfast. Get it high fat, get it high protein. It will keep you full for a long, long, long time. Meal 2, if you're training in the morning, this will be your post-workout meal. So it's going to be simple carbs with minimal fats. You can, of course, increase the amount of fats you're having. If you're then going to work straight after the gym, you want to stay fuller for longer. Basically, it's going to refuel you post-workout. Or, you know, if you're on a rest day, I would treat it as a mid-morning snack. You want to include carbs in this meal, especially if your first meal was carb-free, because, you know, especially if you're going to work, then, you know, you're using a lot of brain power. You need the carbohydrates to fuel your brain and your body. Meal 3. So if you are training in the afternoon, this will be your pre-workout meal. As I said, it should include carbs, fat and protein. If it is just a what you would call your lunch or like your mid-afternoon meal, again, protein and fat is sufficient if you had carbs with your meal 2. But, you know, if you've got the carbs to spare, then definitely you should be having carbs with all of the meals. But, you know, people who are on lower carb diets, as they're sort of nearing the end of their fat loss phase, it's good to have like one carb-free meal, which obviously you can choose, whether it's, you know, your lunch or your breakfast, depending on when you train, that kind of thing. So That is meal 3, and then meal 4 would obviously be post-workout, or if it's your evening meal. Generally, people want to include carbohydrates with their evening meal. You know, you want to have a spag bowl, you want the full work. So again, if it's a post-workout meal, there's nothing wrong with eating like a normal meal, like a spag bowl for your post-workout. Not everyone wants to have cereal for dinner. So there's nothing wrong with it, but yeah, basically, generally, people always want to have carbs with their last meal, which is fair enough. So, post-workout meals. I've gone over this a little bit already, but basically, a pre-workout meal should increase the glycogen levels in the body and help prevent catabolism, which is basically the opposite of growth. Metabolism is metabolizing your food. Catabolism, why is it so hard for me to say, is the opposite, basically. You should eat it an hour and a half, 2 hours before you work out for optimal results. For example, I eat mine an hour and a half before, otherwise I get hungry halfway through the session, because I am a greedy person. So it should obviously consist of protein, something that's medium to fast digesting, carbohydrates, mostly from complex carbohydrates, and then a good level of fat to kind of like further slow down the absorption of complex carbs, and then obviously things like the micronutrients. With your pre-workout, you want to stay away from like highly fibrous fruit and veg, like your cruciferous veg, like broccoli, cauliflower, that kind of thing. You want something that's quite light and easily to digest, so like salad and berries, basically. Not in the same bowl, but you know what I mean. Post-workout is going to be refueling your body after. So it's basically like the most important part of muscle building and recovery. Poor post-workout nutrition, less gains, more muscle soreness. You don't want to eat this any more than 2 hours post-workout. But there's no such thing as like this protein window or like this magic window that you have to neck a protein shake like immediately post-workout. That doesn't work like that. It's not true. But you don't really want to leave it any later than 2 hours to eat your post-workout. And again, proteins, minimal fats, but again, it's not the end of the world if you have like a good amount of fat. Like if you're eating like your dinner post-workout, it doesn't really matter. You know, massive amounts. And then obviously carbohydrates, depending on your preference, you want something medium to fast digesting. You know, if you are having your dinner straight afterwards, treat yourself to a Squares bar in the car on the way home from your workout, and you've got that the simple carbs in there quickly, and replace some of the muscle glycogen quite quickly. And then micronutrients is really important to have all the micronutrients, eat all of the veg in your post-workout meal. Replace the vitamins and minerals that you've lost throughout sweat. So it's intermittent fasting. Now this is one of my biggest bugbears as a coach, because you know, people say, I want to try intermittent fasting, you know, it's really going to help me lose fat. It's a hunger management tool. It's not a fat loss tool. Yes, it does work. It is beneficial, but not because you are doing anything to your metabolism. It's just a case of how you're spacing out the calories. So for example, this is, you know, non-intermittent fasting. This is someone who wakes up, you know, this is a normal day of eating. Say they're eating 2,000 calories. They have 500 calories for each meal, basically. And they start eating at 7:30, and their last meal is at 7 o'clock in the evening. Intermittent fasting, the way I don't want my emails. In intermittent fasting, the way it works, there's two options, basically. The first option is you basically would continue having 4 meals a day. You just eat them later. So, you know, you'd have your first meal at 11, your second meal at 2, your third meal at 6, and then that leaves you 500 calories to either have like a dessert or a snack, or if you're someone that likes to eat something before bed, or like have like a pre-bed shake or something like that, you have the option then to have that. So it's basically condensing your 2,000 calories into a shorter time frame, so you're less likely to be hungry throughout the day, you know, when you're at work, that kind of thing. The second option is just then condensing it into 3 meals. You know, if you're not hungry first thing in the morning, you wait till 11 and you're just going to have 3 meals. You know, you've got 666 calories to play with if you're eating 2,000 calories. So that's how it works. It's just condensing. You know, you basically have more calories to eat in a short space of time. And that's basically how intermittent fasting works. So the other diet types and their pros and cons. So I'm not biased at all. I have a mostly carnivorous diet. I would love to be a vegetarian. I'd love to have more vegetarian or pescatarian influence in my life, but I have a shitty excuse, and that is that I cook for both me and Ryan, and he's not that keen on veggie foods, even though he would probably eat them. It's just easy, it's convenient. So, but I imagine that once I finish doing bodybuilding, then I will definitely go to a vegetarian diet for sure. Pros of a vegan diet: so it's ethical, environmentally friendly. They have a really good selection of products these days. You have the decreased health risks of obviously eating things like red meat and processed foods. It's all plant-based. It's not animal derived. There's less saturated fats in there. It's generally just a heart healthy, body healthy kind of diet to follow. The issue with vegan is it's hard to consume complete protein sources. So things like, yes, you do get protein from beans and peas and that kind of thing, but it's not a complete protein source, and you need to eat a complete protein source. And by complete protein source, that means it's got all 13 amino acids in, for your body to actually to grow muscle and, to recover properly. You have to have a complete protein source, or have to be consuming complete protein sources for protein to be doing your body actual good. So it's a lot harder to consume complete protein sources from things like beans and pulses and stuff like that. And typically the protein sources your beans and your legumes are higher in either fats or carbs, like tofu, that kind of thing. So it can, especially if you're, tracking on MyFitnessPal, you can chew up your carbohydrate allowance, which can be hard, especially if you're on a low carb diet or lower carb than normal at the end of your fat loss phase. It is hard to obviously make it all fit. In that case, people often have to resort to buying meat substitutes like corn, and that can be a little bit more expensive than obviously eating things like beans and quinoa and stuff like that. And generally, they're more reliant on supplementation to be able to eat a sufficient amount of protein. You can do it, but generally people are, if you've got actual health and fitness goals, you want to gain muscle, it's hard. It's hard to do it as a vegan. So yeah. Veggie, pescatarian diets, you've got slightly more pros than, a vegan meal. It's still ethical, still quite environmentally friendly, providing that you're buying everything, responsibly sourced. There's a good selection of products available. Again, you've got the added benefit of decreased health risks, and it's easier to consume complete protein sources from things like yogurt, and cheese and eggs, that kind of thing. The cons, of course, are obviously, protein sources, if you aren't having meat alternatives, can be higher in fats and carbs, and it can be expensive buying meat substitutes. So, carnivorous. Pros: good selection of vitamins and minerals derived from animal products. As I mentioned, B12 is found in red meat. Complete protein sources is much cheaper than a vegetarian or a vegan diet if you're buying meat substitutes and that kind of thing. Less ethical, but greater environmental impact, but this is lessened if you buy your meat locally from a butcher. And then of course you have the increased health risks from things like red meat consumption. Keto. Now, I know I said I wasn't biased, but keto is literally my least favourite diet that people follow. It's just ridiculous, in my opinion. The only benefits that I think it has is if you are kind of on the cusp of diabetes and you need to reduce the carbohydrate intake. Keto is really good for that. Obviously, if you're eating a lot of fats and a lot of protein, it's going to keep you really full, but it's increased cholesterol. It's not satisfying. It's not sustainable for long-term results. It does get short-term weight loss results, but most of the time it's just water weight that you're losing. It's not actually fat. And then obviously after a while your body starts using organ and muscle tissue for energy sources if you're not eating carbohydrates. Ketosis is really hard on the liver as well, so it's not a beneficial thing. So if I ever see any of you following a keto diet, I will punch you in the face. Right, healthy eating. Now, where is my healthy eating slide? Oh, there it is. Some of this might be quite obvious, but, people know that they have to eat healthily, but they don't always understand why. Eating a healthy diet is not about strict limitations, and depriving yourself of the foods you love and staying unrealistically thin. It's more about having a balance, feeling good within yourself, having more energy, improving your general health and boosting your mood. Now, this is the one thing that every single one of my clients say to me after 2 or 3 weeks of eating on their meal plan. I feel great, I have more energy, I feel better within myself, feel healthier, my mood is better. You know, you are a walking, talking example of the benefits of eating healthily. So, yeah. Why do we need to eat healthily? Obviously, it reduces your chance of developing heart disease and cancer. You know, good diet can improve all aspects of your life: brain function, physical performance, sex drive, hormone regulation. It can improve your PMS symptoms, your hormone balance, literally everything. Food literally impacts, the food that we put in our body impacts us in so many ways. It affects all of your cells and organs. So, yeah. And then obviously we have the sport aspect, you know, healthy eating. It's going to improve your performance in sport, you know, eating clean foods. Is going to provide you with proper energy, basically. How to have a balanced diet. Now, you will find, especially as you learn about like things like MyFitnessPal, there's an 80-20 rule that we like to go by. 80% of the foods, and you can look at this meal by meal. Like, let's take my baked oats obsession for an example. You know, 80% of that baked oats recipe is oats, protein powder, and fruit. And then 20% of it is the dark chocolate that I have in there. So if you take that approach with each meal, so, you know, let's have your spag bowl, you've got your slow release carbohydrates, you've got your brown pasta, you've got your, you know, nice mince, and you've got your vegetables, and then you've got the cheese on top, which is the smallest component, but you've still got it there. And that's the attitude that we should take to, obviously, all of our meals and to our day, basically. It's not what you eat, it's how much of what you eat that really, really matters. So, the importance of salt. Now, salt has a really bad rep. You know, people think that eating a lot of salt is really bad for you, and it absolutely is, but it's a really vital component to your diet. Salt maintains the fluid equilibrium in your body, the homeostasis, water homeostasis, and our body has a really sophisticated mechanism to make sure that we are constantly in that sort of like area of homeostasis. And it's sodium is a critical nutrient to maintaining, obviously, like normal physiological function and helping with optimal exercise performance. You should be having with each meal 3 grinds of Himalayan pink salt. You can get it off Amazon, and 1 gram of low salt. Again, get it off Amazon. It's in most supermarkets. Yeah, it's really good. And this will help to rehydrate your body, prevent things like bloating and water retention. It will help replace lost electrolytes from sweat, helps with your mind-muscle connection and muscle contraction. So if you've ever had that shitty workout where you couldn't like feel any of the exercise, you couldn't get a good connection or anything, it's probably because you didn't have enough salt in your diet. And again, it's why it's really important to put it in your pre-workout meal. I know it sounds weird putting it in things like yogurt or oats. You can't taste the salt at all. You can't taste it. And it actually, like, salt actually enhances the flavours of some things as well. So it's a really good addition. And it will also help to reduce cramping as well, because that's the function that potassium has in the body as well. So get yourself some pink salt and some low salt ordered and stick it on all your meals. Now, supplements. So generally, you know, fruit and veg should be the primary supplement to cure deficiencies, health issues, that kind of thing, you know, boost your immune system. But there are occasions, obviously, where we have to resort to supplements in order to maintain a good level of health. And this could be because, you know, someone needs more than the average person, or, you know, like, for example, vitamin D3. In the winter, there's less sunlight. We can't control that. So it's good to have, like, the supplement option. Supplements that I would recommend people take daily, definitely creatine, 5 grams daily. It's an energy system that is used by your muscles, so it will definitely help with your workouts. It will have really good impact on your workouts. Vitamin D3, definitely good to take in the winter months when there's less sunlight. Obviously, that helps absorb things like calcium. It improves your mood, that kind of thing. Vitamin B12 and iron, particularly important for girls and people who don't like red meat. They're quite essential in preventing things like fatigue and dizziness, and lethargy and that kind of thing. Especially with girls who have periods, you are losing blood, you are losing iron, so you need to replace that in some way. Krill oil. So if you don't like oily fish, it's a really good source of omega-3 and essential fatty acids. I don't recommend that people take cod liver oil, and the reason is the function of the liver in every single mammal is to remove toxins and remove the shit from your body. So making an oil out of a fish's liver, where it's literally been that's an oil made out of all of the shit that has been detoxified from that fish. So sack off the cod liver oil, get some krill oil. It's a little bit more expensive, but it's so much better than cod liver oil. And then DIM. So this is a lesser known sort of supplement that I started taking a lot last year when I was in my prep. It really helped me with hormone regulation. So it really lessened my PMS symptoms and stuff like that. It's mostly found in broccoli, but it's also you can get it as a supplement, and it acts as a detoxifier. So it removes all the additives and the additional hormones from your body that can come from things like meat or chemical reactions. It basically removes the hormone wastage from your body. It's really good. So yeah, I'm pretty sure that is it for this. Now, if you have any questions, drop them in the comments below and I will get back to you. Hope you enjoyed this, hope you've learned something from it, and yeah, let me know if anyone has any questions and I will be happy to answer them. So yeah, bye!